"Mom, you've lived long enough. I'm not wasting my day off at an old lady's party." My son screamed at me on my 7-second birthday. I just smiled and blew out the candles alone. The next morning, he got a call from the bank. I had canceled his cards and cut him out of the will. When he found out my net worth, he passed out cold. "My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old. And let me tell you about the moment my own son looked me dead in the eye during my birthday party and said the words that would haunt me for weeks. Mom, honestly, you've been around long enough. I'm not wasting my only day off at some pity party for an old lady." Then he stormed out of my living room, slamming my front door so hard that the windows rattled and my neighbor's dog started barking 3 houses down. The sound echoed through my quiet suburban street in Naperville, Illinois, like a gunshot on that peaceful Sunday afternoon. It was April 28th, around 2:15 in the afternoon. I had spent the entire morning preparing everything with such care, baking his favorite red velvet cake from scratch, making those little sliders he used to devour as a teenager, arranging fresh daisies from my garden in my grandmother's crystal vase. I even invited Mrs. Henderson and the Johnsons from the Homeowners Association because I thought it would be nice to have more people celebrating. My daughter-in-law Jennifer was there with my 2 precious grandchildren, Tyler, who just turned 10 and loves baseball cards, and little Ashley, who's 7 and still believes in fairy tales. They were sitting on my floral couch, dressed up nicely for Grandma's special day, when their father decided to destroy everything. Michael works as a sales manager at Fitzgerald Ford dealership on Route 59. He's always complaining about his quotas, always saying he needs to decompress on weekends. But this wasn't just another bad mood. This felt different, meaner, more calculated. When he walked through my front door at 2 o'clock, a full hour late, mind you, he already had that look. You know the one. That annoyed, impatient expression like being in my home was somehow beneath him. Jennifer tried her best to smooth things over, poor thing. "Mike, come on. It's just for a couple hours. It's your mother's birthday." Her voice was soft, pleading almost. But he just snapped, right there in front of everyone, including his own children. "Mom, for crying out loud! I grind 60 hours a week at that dealership. I need my downtime. I don't have the patience to sit here pretending to celebrate you getting even older." Every word felt like a physical blow. The kids went completely silent, their eyes wide with shock. Ashley actually scooted closer to her mother on the couch. I felt my chest tighten like someone was squeezing my heart with a vice. 72 years of life, 48 of them raising this ungrateful boy, working double shifts as a seamstress to put him through college, helping him with his student loans, even when I was struggling myself. "And this is the respect I get?" Jennifer looked down at her hands, her cheeks burning red with embarrassment. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat uncomfortably. The whole room felt like it was holding its breath. But you know what I did? I smiled. I actually forced myself to smile and said in my sweetest voice, "It's okay, sweetheart. Go home and relax. I understand you're tired." Then I sat there at my dining room table, the same table where I had helped him with his homework every night for 12 years, and I blew out all 72 candles on my birthday cake, alone, while everyone watched in uncomfortable silence. The vanilla-scented smoke rose up toward my ceiling fan, and I made a wish. Not for more years, not for better health, not even for his love. I wished for something much more powerful. I wished for the strength to never let anyone, especially my own flesh and blood, treat me like a burden ever again. What I didn't know at that moment, sitting there with cake crumbs on my good china and tears threatening to spill down my cheeks, was that this humiliation would become the catalyst for the most empowering transformation of my entire life. But the story I'm about to tell you goes so much deeper than one terrible afternoon. Because what my son Michael didn't realize was that his cruel words had just awakened something in his mother that had been sleeping for far too long. If you've ever felt invisible, taken for granted, or treated like you don't matter by the people who should love you most, then you'll understand why what happened next needed to happen. And if you're watching this thinking about your own family dynamics, please leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy real stories about finding your voice when you thought it was lost forever. Because what I discovered about my son in the following weeks would make that birthday humiliation look like a gentle breeze compared to the hurricane that was coming. Let me back up and tell you how we got to that devastating moment, because understanding the full picture will help you see why I stayed silent for so long when I should have been speaking up. My husband Robert died of a massive heart attack 17 years ago, when Michael was 31 and just getting his feet under him at the dealership. Robert had been the disciplinarian in our house, not harsh, but firm. He had this way of looking at Michael that said, "Cut the nonsense," without saying a word. After Robert passed, I became both mother and father, cheerleader and boundary setter. And honestly, I wasn't very good at the boundary part. I owned a successful alterations business called Margaret's Fine Tailoring that I ran out of a small shop on Washington Street downtown. For 35 years, I hemmed wedding dresses, tailored men's suits, and fixed everything from torn school uniforms to vintage coats. I was good with my hands, good with people, and better with money than most folks realized. When Michael got married to Jennifer 14 years ago, I was so happy. Jennifer is a dental hygienist at Dr. Morrison's practice, sweet as pie, always trying to keep the peace. She grew up in a house where voices were never raised, where problems were solved quietly behind closed doors. The complete opposite of how I was raised in my Irish Catholic family, where we aired everything out loud and clear. The financial dependency started small, really small. "Mom, could you help us out with the security deposit? I'll pay you back when my bonus comes through." Or, "Mom, the transmission went out on Jennifer's car. Could you spot us $1,500 until we get the insurance settlement?" And like a fool, I always said yes. I wrote check after check, telling myself I was helping my family build their life together. I paid the down payment on their beautiful colonial house in Timber Creek Estates, $22,000 that I had saved for my own retirement trips. I co-signed his truck loan when his credit wasn't quite good enough. I even paid for Tyler's private baseball camp 2 summers running because all the other kids in his league were going. But somewhere along the way, the requests stopped being requests and started feeling more like expectations. Michael would call on Sunday afternoons, never to ask how I was feeling or what I had been up to, but to tell me about some financial emergency that needed my immediate attention. "Mom, the property taxes are due, and we're a little short this quarter." "Mom, Jennifer needs dental work, and our insurance doesn't cover it all." "Mom, we want to take the kids to Disney World, but we can't swing it right now." The worst part wasn't the money. The worst part was watching him change. 3 years ago, Michael started treating me like I was losing my mind. He'd correct me in front of people, talk slower like I couldn't understand, and make comments about my spending that made me feel like a child. "Mom, why did you buy that new winter coat at Nordstrom? You need to be more careful with your money at your age." This from a man whose truck payment I was covering. "Mom, maybe you shouldn't be driving to the city anymore. The traffic is getting dangerous." I had been driving those same streets since before he was born. Jennifer started bringing the kids over for short visits when Michael was working late, always checking her phone nervously, always making excuses to leave early. "We don't want to wear you out, Margaret." But I could see it in her eyes. She was afraid of something. The isolation happened so gradually that I didn't even notice it at first. My bridge club friends stopped hearing from me because I was always available when Michael needed something. I stopped making plans because I never knew when he'd call with another emergency. I canceled a cruise with my sister Rose because Michael made me feel guilty about wasting money when his family needed help. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly he had orchestrated it all. Keep me financially invested in his success, make me feel essential to his family's stability, but simultaneously convince me that I was becoming a burden who couldn't be trusted with my own decisions. The birthday party wasn't just about him having a bad day at work. It was the natural conclusion of years of him training me to accept less and less respect while giving more and more of myself. But standing in my kitchen that Sunday evening, cleaning up cake plates and throwing away decorations that no one had really enjoyed, something started stirring in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even hurt. It was a question that I couldn't push away no matter how hard I tried. What exactly was my son planning to do with all that power I had given him over my life? And that question was about to lead me down a path that would reveal truths I never could have imagined. The morning after my birthday disaster, I woke up with something I hadn't felt in years: pure, clear-headed determination. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't making excuses for Michael's behavior or convincing myself that I had somehow deserved it. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, the good Colombian blend that Michael always criticized as too expensive for every day, sat at my kitchen table and started thinking like the businesswoman I had been for 3 decades instead of the guilty mother I had become. You see, when you run your own business for 35 years like I did, you develop instincts about people. You learn to spot when someone is trying to take advantage of you, when they're lying about their circumstances, when they're playing games with numbers. But when it's your own child, you ignore every red flag because you want to believe the best about them. Not anymore. Tuesday morning, I drove to the Chase Bank branch on Ogden Avenue, where I had been banking for 25 years. It was 9:30 in the morning, and the parking lot was already busy with the usual crowd of retirees and small business owners handling their weekly banking. I walked up to Sandra's window. She's been my teller since she started there fresh out of college, and now she's got 2 kids of her own, and asked for printed statements going back 6 months. "Mrs. Murphy, you know you can check all this online, right?" she said with her usual friendly smile, her fingers already typing on her computer. "Sandra, honey, I want to see it on paper, all of it. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every automatic payment. Can you print it all out for me?" She looked a little puzzled but nodded. "Of course. It might take a few minutes to print everything. Would you like to have a seat?" While I waited in those uncomfortable blue chairs they have in the lobby, I watched other customers come and go. A young mother depositing birthday money for her toddler, an elderly man counting out small bills to make a payment. Normal people doing normal banking things, not like what I was about to discover about my own family. Sandra called me back after 15 minutes with a thick stack of papers. "Here you go, Mrs. Murphy. 6 months of complete statements." "Thank you, sweetheart." I walked out to my car in that bank parking lot, sat behind the wheel, and started going through those papers line by line. What I found made my hands shake so hard I could barely hold the papers steady. Michael had been using my debit card for everything. And I mean everything. Gas for his Ford F-150. Not just once or twice, but constantly. $85 every 3 days at the Shell station near his work. $92 at the BP on Route 59. $78 at the Mobil near his house. I added it up. Over $400 a month just in gas for his truck. My gas. Groceries at Whole Foods. $230 here, $185 there, $312 for a single shopping trip. I shop at Jewel Osco and spend maybe $80 a week feeding myself. He was spending more on one grocery run than I spend in a month. Restaurants that I had never even heard of. Gibson's Steakhouse downtown, $315 for one meal. Wildfire in Schaumburg, $247. Someplace called RPM Italian, $412. These weren't family dinners. These were business meals, date nights, celebrations that I was unknowingly paying for. Amazon purchases that showed up almost daily on my statement. March 15th, $137. March 18th, $89. March 22nd, $264. March 25th, $95. What was he buying? Power tools, electronics, gifts for other people? All charged to my account. But the really big withdrawals were what made my stomach drop to the floor. Cash withdrawals of $500, $800, sometimes $1,000 at a time, always on Fridays, always from the ATM near his dealership on Route 59. I sat there with my calculator, the same one I had used to balance my business books for decades, and added it all up. In just the past 5 months, my own son had taken over $9,500 from my checking account. Money I had earned by working 12-hour days for 35 years. Money I had saved by clipping coupons and shopping sales. Money that was supposed to be for my future medical expenses and daily living. But it got worse. So much worse. I noticed patterns in the withdrawals. They weren't random. They were strategic. He would take large amounts right after my Social Security and pension deposits came in. He knew exactly when my money hit the account, and he was skimming off the top before I even knew it was there. The most devastating part was realizing how long this had been going on. I pulled out my phone and called the bank's customer service line. "Chase Customer Service, this is David. How can I help you today?" "David, this is Margaret Murphy. I need to know how far back you can print account statements for me. We can provide up to 2 years of detailed statements, Mrs. Murphy. Would you like me to send those to your address on file?" "Yes, please. Mail them to my home address, all of them." When those statements arrived 3 days later, 2 thick manila envelopes worth of evidence. The scope of Michael's theft became clear. This hadn't started 5 months ago. This had been going on for over 18 months. The total amount was closer to $18,000. $18,000 stolen from his own mother, and I had been so trusting, so willing to believe his explanations for any financial discrepancies that I hadn't noticed. But that was just the beginning of what I was about to discover. Wednesday afternoon, I was at Jewel Osco buying groceries, actually buying groceries with my own money for once, when I ran into Linda Kowalski near the produce section. Linda works in real estate with Coldwell Banker, and we've chatted a few times at St. Patrick's Church functions. She's always been friendly, the kind of person who remembers your grandchildren's names and asks about your health. "Margaret," she called out, waving from behind a cart full of fresh vegetables. "How exciting about your move to Florida. Michael told us you're finally ready for that retirement lifestyle." The bag of apples I was holding nearly slipped from my hands. "Excuse me?" "Oh, your house sale. Michael was showing it to Jim Patterson last week. You know Jim? He flips houses in our area, usually the older colonials like yours. Michael said you were ready to downsize to one of those nice senior communities down south where you can play bingo and take water aerobics classes." I felt my blood freeze in my veins. Every word she was saying felt like another nail being hammered into my coffin. "Linda, I'm not moving anywhere." The confusion on her face was immediate and genuine. Oh my goodness. Maybe I misunderstood. Michael seemed so sure. He had all these brochures about Florida retirement communities, and he was telling Jim about how you wanted to be closer to the beach. I managed to force a smile and change the subject to her daughter's wedding plans, but inside, my mind was racing like a hamster on a wheel. Michael was showing my house to house flippers, my house that I owned free and clear, that I had no intention of selling, that represented my security and independence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the little comments he had made over the past year, comments that I had dismissed as concern, but now realized were something much more calculated. "Mom, this house is way too big for you now. All these stairs can't be good for your knees. Mom, you don't need all these bedrooms just sitting empty. Think about all the heating bills you could save. Mom, wouldn't you be happier somewhere with activities and people your own age? Somewhere with medical facilities right on site?" He had been planting seeds, preparing me to accept the idea that I couldn't live independently anymore, softening me up for the big push. Thursday morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Rose in Phoenix. "Rose, it's Margaret." "Oh my God, Maggie. It's been months. How are you? How's Michael? How are the grandkids?" "Rose, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think I'm losing my mind? Do you think I'm getting senile or incompetent?" There was a long pause. "Maggie, what kind of question is that? You're one of the sharpest people I know. You still do your own taxes. You manage that big house. You drive all over Chicagoland. Why would you even ask that?" Michael keeps making comments about my memory, about my decision-making. He acts like I can't be trusted with my own life anymore. That's ridiculous. Last time we talked, you were telling me about some complicated investment strategy you were researching. You knew more about market conditions than most financial advisors. What's really going on, Maggie? I told her everything. The bank statements, the house showing, the constant criticism. Rose listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Maggie, this isn't about your competence. This is about control and money. He's setting you up for something big, and you need to protect yourself right now." Thursday evening, as if the universe was determined to show me the full scope of what I was dealing with, my phone rang. It was Jennifer, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Margaret, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to tell you something, and I'm scared." "Sweetheart, slow down. What's wrong?" "It's about Michael. He's been meeting with some lawyer downtown. He's been asking about getting you declared." Oh God, I can't even say it. My heart started pounding. "Jennifer, take a deep breath and tell me exactly what's happening. He wants to have you declared incompetent. He thinks he can get legal guardianship over you and your finances. He keeps saying you're losing your memory, that you can't take care of yourself anymore, that you're making bad decisions with money." The phone almost slipped from my hand. My worst suspicions were being confirmed in real time. "He what?" I told him it was crazy, that you're sharper than most people half your age, but he won't listen to me. He never listens to me about anything anymore. He's been documenting things, Margaret. Like last month when you forgot to turn off the sprinklers and the water bill was higher than usual? He wrote that down in some kind of notebook. When you got confused about which day Tyler's baseball game was scheduled? He wrote that down too. When you bought that new coat at Nordstrom? He said it was proof of erratic spending behavior. I felt like I was falling down a deep, dark hole with no bottom. My own son was building a legal case to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take control of my entire life. Every small mistake, every normal moment of human forgetfulness, every reasonable purchase was being twisted into evidence of my declining mental capacity. Jennifer, why are you telling me this? Why are you risking your marriage to warn me? Because it's wrong. Because you raised him better than this. Because you've been nothing but generous and loving to our family. And this is how he's repaying you. And because, her voice broke completely, because I found out he's been stealing money from your account. And when I confronted him about it, he told me if I said anything to anyone, he'd divorce me and make sure I never see Tyler and Ashley again. That's when everything clicked into place like puzzle pieces falling from the sky. The gradual isolation from my friends, the constant criticism of my mental abilities, the financial manipulation, the house showing, the documentation of my supposed incompetence. Michael wasn't just being a difficult son. He was systematically working to take control of my entire life and assets. This was a long-term plan. This was premeditated elder abuse on a scale that made my head spin. Jennifer, has he said anything about what he plans to do with my money once he gets control? Another long pause. He talks about investing it better, about moving you somewhere more appropriate for your age, about making sure Tyler and Ashley have college funds and a good inheritance someday. My inheritance isn't his to manage, Jennifer. It's mine to live on, and mine to decide what happens to. I know, and I'm so sorry I didn't say something sooner. I was scared, and I didn't want to cause problems, but this has gone too far. After I hung up with Jennifer, I sat in my living room, the same room where he had humiliated me just days earlier, and tried to process the full scope of what I was dealing with. Michael wasn't just stealing money from me. He was stealing my autonomy, my dignity, my right to make decisions about my own life. He was planning to have me declared legally incompetent so he could control every aspect of my existence while spending my money on his own lifestyle. The cruelest part was how clever it all was. By gradually convincing everyone around me and trying to convince me that I was losing my mental capacity, he was creating a narrative that would make his guardianship petition seem like a loving son protecting his declining mother. Friday morning, I called my attorney, James Davis, who had handled Robert's estate and my business affairs for over 20 years. Jim's office is downtown on LaSalle Street, in one of those old buildings with marble lobbies and brass elevators that make you feel like serious business gets done there. Jim, I need to see you today. It's urgent. Margaret, what's going on? You sound upset. My son is trying to steal my life, and I need your help to stop him. I was in Jim's office by 2 o'clock that afternoon, armed with bank statements, notes from my conversation with Linda about the house showing, and everything Jennifer had told me about the incompetency proceedings. Jim listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and shook his head. Margaret, what Michael is doing is called elder financial abuse, and it's a felony in Illinois. The systematic theft from your accounts, the deceptive practices, the guardianship scheme, this makes it aggravated elder abuse. He could face serious prison time for this. But Jim, he has power of attorney. I gave it to him 3 years ago when I had that hip surgery, just in case something happened to me during the recovery. That power of attorney was supposed to be used for your benefit, not his. He's violated every ethical and legal standard that governs financial powers of attorney. We need to revoke it immediately and take steps to protect your remaining assets. What kind of steps? Jim leaned forward, his expression serious but determined. Margaret, I need to ask you something important, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Michael obviously thinks he knows what you're worth financially, but does he really? Have you ever shown him your complete financial picture? I almost laughed, despite the gravity of the situation. Jim, he thinks I'm just an old seamstress living on Social Security and a small pension. He has no idea about the life insurance money from Robert or the investments I made with it, or what this house is really worth in today's market. Tell me the real numbers. I took a deep breath and recited figures I knew by heart, but had never shared with my son. The house is worth about $650,000 in the current market. The 401k from my tailoring business has $423,000. The index funds I bought with Robert's life insurance money are worth about $730,000 as of last month's statement. My savings accounts, even after Michael's theft, still have about $60,000. Jim's eyebrows shot up, and he started scribbling numbers on a legal pad. Margaret, you're worth almost $2 million. $1,863,000, plus whatever the house appraises for exactly. But Michael thinks I'm poor and helpless. A slow smile spread across Jim's face. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile a chess player gets when they see their opponent has just made a fatal mistake. Well then, I think it's time your son learned just how wrong he can be about underestimating his mother. What we planned in that office over the next 2 hours would not only stop Michael's scheme in its tracks, it would teach him a lesson about respect, honesty, and the consequences of betraying family trust that he would carry for the rest of his life. If you're watching this and thinking about what you would do in my situation, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had family members underestimate you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and protecting yourself? Tell me where you're watching from and what you think about adult children who take advantage of their parents. Because what happened next was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone assumes is harmless. Walking out of Jim Davis's office that Friday afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, the thrill of being underestimated by someone who thought they were so much smarter than me. Michael had no idea what kind of strategic mind he was dealing with. After all, you don't successfully run a business for 35 years in a competitive market without learning how to outmaneuver people who think they can take advantage of you. The plan Jim and I developed was beautiful in its simplicity. We would let Michael continue believing he was in control while we systematically dismantled every aspect of his scheme. But first, I had to do something that went against every maternal instinct I had. I had to act like the helpless, confused old woman he thought I was. Saturday morning, I drove to the Walmart on Route 59 and bought a small digital recorder, the kind people use for taking voice memos. $27.99 that would turn out to be the best investment I ever made. I also picked up a notebook and started documenting everything with dates, times, and details. If Michael wanted to play the evidence game, I would show him how it was really done. That weekend, I practiced. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and worked on looking confused, uncertain, easily manipulated. I rehearsed responses that would make Michael think his gaslighting was working. It was harder than you might imagine. After years of running my own business and making my own decisions, acting helpless felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit. But I kept thinking about that $18,000 he had stolen, about him showing my house to flippers, about his plan to have me declared incompetent. That gave me all the motivation I needed to perfect my performance. Monday morning, I called Michael at the dealership. I had to time it perfectly, early enough that he'd be busy with customers, but not so early that he'd refuse to take my call. Fitzgerald Ford, this is Michael. Michael, honey, it's Mom. I made my voice just a little shakier than usual, a little more uncertain. I'm having trouble with my computer again, and I can't figure out how to check my bank account online. Could you help me? There was a pause. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his head. Here was his doddering old mother, confirming once again that she couldn't manage modern technology or her own finances. Mom, I told you before, those online banking sites are too complicated for people your age. That's why I help you with the bills, remember? You don't need to worry about checking the account all the time. But Michael, I just want to make sure I have enough money for groceries this week. I got confused at the store yesterday and couldn't remember if I had already bought milk this week. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, are you having memory problems again? Maybe you should write things down more often. Perfect. He was taking the bait. Maybe you're right, sweetheart. Could you just tell me how much money I have? I don't want to overdraw the account. Don't worry about it, Mom. You have plenty for groceries. I'll stop by this week and help you organize your bills. When I hung up, I immediately wrote down every word of that conversation in my notebook. Date, time, his exact phrases. Jim had explained that Michael's own words would be crucial evidence of his manipulation tactics. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Jennifer. Margaret, Michael wants to bring some paperwork by for you to sign on Sunday. He says it's about organizing your finances better. What kind of paperwork, dear? I don't know exactly, but he's been meeting with that lawyer again. He seems really excited about something. This was it. The guardianship petition, the financial power transfers, whatever legal documents he thought would give him complete control over my life. Jennifer, what time on Sunday? Around 11 in the morning. He wants to do it before the kids get restless. Of course he does. Tell him I'll be here. After I hung up, I called Jim. It's happening Sunday. He's bringing the papers. Perfect. Are you ready for this, Margaret? I've been ready since he slammed my door last Monday. Wednesday, I drove to my bank and met with the branch manager, a competent woman named Carol Stevenson who had helped me refinance my house a few years earlier. Jim had called ahead to explain the situation. Mrs. Murphy, Mr. Davis explained what's been happening. I want you to know we take elder financial abuse very seriously here. Carol, I need to revoke my son's access to my accounts immediately, but I don't want him to know yet. Can we do that quietly? Absolutely. We'll remove his name and debit card access today, but we won't notify him until you give us the word. We'll also flag the account for any unusual activity. And I want to transfer most of my checking account balance to a new account that only I can access. How much would you like to transfer? I thought about it. Michael knew roughly how much money came in each month from my Social Security and pension. I needed to leave enough that my normal spending wouldn't alert him to the changes, but not so much that he could steal significantly more. Leave about $3,000 in the checking account. Transfer everything else to a new account. When the paperwork was done, I had successfully protected over $47,000 from my son's theft. The new account was in my name only, at a different branch, with its own debit card and checkbook that I would keep locked in my bedroom safe. Thursday, Jim and I met again to finalize our strategy for Sunday's confrontation. His office felt different this time, less like a place where I was seeking help, and more like a war room where we were planning a victory. Margaret, I want to walk through exactly what's going to happen on Sunday. Michael is going to arrive with documents that he expects you to sign without reading carefully. These will likely include a revised power of attorney giving him broader control, possibly documents related to selling your house, and potentially papers that begin the guardianship process. And I'm going to sign them? You're going to appear to consider signing them. You're going to ask questions that make you seem confused but compliant. And you're going to record every word he says while he explains why you need to sign. Jim handed me a folder, thick with official-looking documents. These are the real papers. Revocation of his power of attorney, a new will that removes him as primary beneficiary, documents transferring your assets to a trust for your grandchildren, and a formal complaint for elder financial abuse that we'll file with the state's attorney's office. I flipped through the papers, feeling a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. It shouldn't have come to this, but since it had, I was going to make sure it was done right. Jim, what happens to Michael when we file the complaint? If convicted of elder financial abuse, he could face 2 to 5 years in prison and be required to pay restitution for everything he stole. His employer will likely terminate him, and he'll have a felony record that will make finding another job in sales very difficult. I thought about Tyler and Ashley, about Jennifer, who was already struggling with the stress of her marriage. Is there any way to handle this that protects the grandchildren? We can offer him a deal. Full restitution, a payment plan for what he stole, and acceptance of the new financial arrangements without contest. In exchange, we don't file criminal charges. But Margaret, that means he gets away with $18,000 in theft. Jim, I don't want my grandchildren to lose their father to prison, even if he deserves it. But I also won't let him think he can manipulate and steal from me without consequences. Then we give him one chance to do the right thing. If he takes the deal and follows through, the kids keep their father. If he doesn't, we destroy him legally. Friday evening, I called my sister Rose to let her know what was happening. I needed someone in my corner who understood the full situation. Maggie, are you sure you're ready for this? Confronting family is never easy. Rose, he stole $18,000 from me and was planning to steal everything else. He was going to have me declared incompetent and stick me in some nursing home while he spent my money. I'm not just ready, I'm looking forward to it. What if he gets violent? What if he threatens you? Then I'll call the police and have him arrested. I'm not afraid of my son anymore, Rose. I'm disappointed in him, but I'm not afraid. Saturday afternoon, I spent time with Tyler and Ashley while Jennifer ran errands. We made cookies in my kitchen, chocolate chip their favorite, and I watched them laugh and play in my backyard. These beautiful children had no idea that their father was about to face the consequences of his greed and manipulation. Tyler, always the more observant of the two, asked me a question that almost broke my heart. "Grandma, why doesn't Dad like coming to your house anymore? He always seems mad when we visit." I knelt down to his level, looking into eyes that reminded me so much of Robert's. "Sometimes adults have problems they need to work out, sweetheart. But no matter what happens between your dad and me, I want you to know that I love you and your sister more than anything in the world. Are you and Dad fighting? We're having a disagreement, but it's not your fault, and it's not something you need to worry about. Adults sometimes have to have difficult conversations to solve problems." That night, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, but because I was so ready for Sunday morning to arrive. I kept thinking about all the times over the past 3 years that Michael had made me feel small, confused, like a burden. Tomorrow, he would learn that his mother was anything but helpless. I thought about the first time he had criticized my spending. "Mom, maybe you should check with me before making big purchases. I just want to make sure you're being wise with your money." At the time, I had felt grateful for his concern. Now I realized it was the opening move in a long-term strategy to control my finances. I thought about the way he talked to me in front of other people, always with that patronizing tone that suggested I couldn't be trusted to understand important matters. Mom gets confused sometimes about money stuff. It's normal at her age. I thought about the times Jennifer had brought the kids over for quick visits, always seeming nervous, always making excuses to leave early. Now I understood she was protecting them from witnessing Michael's disrespect toward me. Most of all, I thought about that moment on my birthday when he had called me a burden, when he had suggested that my 72 years of life, my decades of working and sacrificing and loving my family, were somehow too much trouble for him to acknowledge with a simple birthday celebration. That was the moment he had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. That was the moment he had stopped being my son, who made mistakes, and became my adversary, who needed to be stopped. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Chicago spring weather that matched my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully, not too formal, which might make Michael suspicious, but neat and put together enough to project competence when I needed to. I set up my digital recorder in the living room, hidden behind a picture frame on the side table next to my reading chair. I placed my notebook and a pen nearby, disguised under a magazine. I put the folder of real legal documents in my bedroom, easily accessible, but out of sight. At 10:45, I saw Michael's black F-150 pull into my driveway. He was alone, carrying a brown leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Briefcase that I had unknowingly paid for with my stolen money. I took a deep breath, said a quick prayer to Robert to give me strength, and prepared to give my son an acting performance worthy of an Academy Award. When the doorbell rang, I walked slowly to answer it, making sure to appear slightly unsteady on my feet. "Michael, honey, come in, come in. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." "No thanks, Mom. I can't stay long. I have some important paperwork for us to go over." He sat down on my sofa, the same sofa where he had humiliated me a week earlier, and opened his briefcase with the confidence of someone who thought he was about to pull off the perfect crime. "Mom, I've been talking to a lawyer about getting your finances organized better. You know how you've been having trouble keeping track of things lately." I sat down in my chair, making sure the recorder was activated. "Oh yes, I have been getting confused about money lately. Just yesterday I couldn't remember if I had paid the electric bill." Michael's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he wanted to hear. "Right. Exactly. So I had some legal papers drawn up that will make everything simpler for you. I'll handle all the bill paying and financial decisions, so you don't have to worry about anything." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. You're so good to your old mother." He pulled out a stack of official-looking documents. "These papers just formalize the arrangement we already have, where I help you with money stuff. But they'll also allow me to make some smart investments with your savings and maybe look into getting you a more suitable living situation." "A more suitable living situation? Well, Mom, this house is really too big for you now. And with your memory issues, it might be safer for you to be somewhere with more support. I found some really nice senior communities that have activities and medical care right on site." I forced myself to look interested rather than furious. "That sounds expensive, dear." "Don't worry about the cost. We'll sell this house and use that money for your care, and I'll make sure your other investments are working harder for you." There it was, the complete plan laid out in his own words, being recorded for posterity. He was planning to steal my house, control my investments, and warehouse me in some senior facility while he spent my money. Michael, these papers look very complicated. Maybe I should have someone else look at them first. His expression shifted slightly, a flash of irritation crossing his face. Mom, I am someone else. I'm your son, and I have your best interests at heart. Besides, who else would you show them to? You don't really have anyone else looking out for you. That comment, the suggestion that I was isolated and dependent entirely on him, was the final piece of evidence I needed. I picked up the pen, held it over the first document, and looked at my son with what I hoped appeared to be gratitude and confusion. Are you sure this is the right thing to do, Michael? Mom, trust me. I know what's best for you. I set down the pen and stood up slowly. You know what, sweetheart? You're absolutely right. You do know what's best. Michael's face relaxed into a smile of triumph. You know what's best for you, Michael, not for me. The smile faded. Mom, what are you talking about? I reached behind the picture frame and held up the digital recorder. I'm talking about the fact that I just recorded you admitting that you plan to steal my house, control my money, and put me in a nursing home against my will. His face went white. Mom, you're confused. That's not what I said. I'm also talking about the $18,000 you've stolen from my checking account over the past year and a half. I have all the bank statements, Michael. Every fraudulent withdrawal, every unauthorized purchase. He started to stand up. You don't understand. Sit down. My voice carried a tone of authority that I hadn't used since he was a teenager trying to sneak out past curfew. Surprisingly, he sat. I understand perfectly. You've been systematically stealing from me while convincing everyone, including me, that I was losing my mental capacity. You've been planning to have me declared incompetent so you could legally steal everything I own. You've been showing my house to buyers without my knowledge or consent. And you had the audacity to do all of this while making me feel like I was a burden on your precious time. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone underestimate your intelligence or your strength, you know the feeling I had in that moment. The satisfaction of watching someone realize they had completely misjudged who they were dealing with. I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me about a time when someone learned not to underestimate you, and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened next would prove that the courage to stand up for yourself is something that gets stronger with age, not weaker. Michael's face went through a series of expressions that I will remember for the rest of my life. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, the dawning realization that his carefully constructed plan had just collapsed around him like a house of cards. Mom, you're being ridiculous. I'm trying to help you, and you're making me sound like some kind of criminal. I walked over to my dining room table and picked up the folder Jim had prepared for me. Ridiculous? Let's see what's ridiculous, shall we? I pulled out the bank statements first, spreading them across my coffee table like evidence at a trial. March 15th, Gibson's Steakhouse, $315. March 22nd, Amazon purchase, $264. March 28th, cash withdrawal, $800. Should I continue? Michael's eyes darted between the papers and my face. Those were legitimate expenses. I was handling things for you. Handling things for me? Michael, I don't eat at restaurants that cost $300 for one meal. I don't shop on Amazon for power tools and electronics. And I certainly don't need to withdraw $800 in cash every Friday afternoon. I pulled out another set of documents. These are from my attorney, James Davis. You remember Jim, don't you? He handled your father's estate. Well, Jim was very interested to learn about your plans for my future. What plans? Mom, you're paranoid. Really? I reached behind the picture frame again and pressed play on the recorder. Michael's own voice filled my living room. We'll sell this house and use that money for your care, and I'll make sure your other investments are working harder for you. Then my voice. Michael, these papers look very complicated. Maybe I should have someone else look at them first. And Michael again. Mom, I am someone else. I'm your son, and I have your best interests at heart. Besides, who else would you show them to? You don't really have anyone else looking out for you. I turned off the recorder and looked at my son. So according to your own words, recorded just 5 minutes ago, you plan to sell my house without my consent, take control of my investments, and isolate me from anyone who might question your decisions. How is that having my best interests at heart? Michael stood up abruptly, his face flushing red. You tricked me. You can't record someone without their permission. Actually, in Illinois, I can record any conversation I'm a part of, as long as one person in the conversation, me, consents to the recording. Jim explained the law to me very thoroughly. I pulled out the next set of documents. These papers revoke your power of attorney, effective immediately. These papers remove you as the primary beneficiary of my will. And these papers establish a trust fund for Tyler and Ashley that they can access when they turn 30, provided they graduate from college. You can't do that. That's my inheritance. Michael, inheritance is something you receive after someone dies. It's not something you steal while they're still alive. He started pacing around my living room like a caged animal. This is insane. I've been helping you for years. I've been taking care of your finances because you can't handle them yourself. Taking care of my finances? Michael, do you have any idea what I'm actually worth? He stopped pacing. You get Social Security and a small pension. You live in this old house. You're not rich, Mom. I almost felt sorry for him in that moment. Almost. Michael, sit down. Let me educate you about something. He reluctantly sat back down, but he was perched on the edge of the sofa like he was ready to bolt. This house is worth $650,000 in today's market. My 401k from the tailoring business has $423,000. The index funds I bought with your father's life insurance money you didn't even know existed, are currently worth $730,000. My various savings accounts, even after you stole $18,000 from them, still contain about $60,000. I watched the color drain from his face as he did the math. That's over $1.8 million, Michael. I'm not some poor old lady living on a fixed income. I'm a millionaire who worked her entire life to build financial security. $1.8 million, he whispered. $1.8 million that you thought you were going to control by having me declared incompetent. $1.8 million that you plan to invest and manage for my own good. Except now, thanks to your greed and your complete lack of respect for me, you won't see a penny of it. Michael's face went from white to red to white again. Mom, please. I made mistakes, but I'm still your son. I'm still Tyler and Ashley's father. Yes, you are. Which is why I'm going to give you one chance, one single chance, to do the right thing. I pulled out the final set of documents from Jim's folder. These papers outline a restitution agreement. You will repay every single dollar you stole from me, all $18,047, over the next 3 years. You will sign documents acknowledging that you committed elder financial abuse. You will agree to have no access to my financial accounts ever again. And you will accept all the changes I've made to my will and financial arrangements without contest. And if you sign this, I don't file criminal charges against you. You keep your job, you stay out of prison, and Tyler and Ashley keep their father. And if you don't, Jim files felony charges for elder financial abuse with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office tomorrow morning. You'll face 2 to 5 years in prison. You'll lose your job at the dealership. You'll have a felony record that will make it nearly impossible to find work in sales ever again. And you'll still have to pay restitution for everything you stole. Michael buried his face in his hands. This is a nightmare. No, Michael. The nightmare was living for 3 years thinking I was losing my mind, thinking I couldn't trust my own judgment, thinking I was a burden on my family. The nightmare was working for 35 years to build financial security, only to have my own son steal from me. The nightmare was planning to spend my final years in some institution while you spent my money on fancy dinners and truck payments. I sat down across from him, and for the first time in this conversation, I softened my voice. Michael, I loved you enough to work double shifts to pay for your college. I loved you enough to co-sign loans when banks wouldn't trust you. I loved you enough to give you power of attorney when I thought you would use it responsibly. But I love myself enough not to let you destroy my life for your convenience. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just borrowing a little here and there, and then it just got out of control. $18,000 doesn't happen by accident, Michael. Showing my house to buyers doesn't happen by accident. Planning to have me declared incompetent doesn't happen by accident. Those were choices, deliberate, calculated choices to betray my trust. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't put the money back in my account. Sorry doesn't undo 3 years of making me question my own sanity. Sorry doesn't rebuild the trust you destroyed. I picked up the restitution agreement and handed it to him along with a pen. But accountability might be a start. Michael stared at the papers for a long moment. I could see him weighing his options, trying to figure out if there was some angle he hadn't considered, some way to manipulate the situation back in his favor. There wasn't. If I sign this, what happens to us? What happens to our relationship? That depends entirely on you, Michael. If you sign this and follow through on your commitments, if you pay back what you stole and treat me with respect going forward, then maybe we can rebuild something. It won't be the same as it was because I'll never trust you completely again, but it could be something. And if I don't sign? If you don't sign, then you've chosen legal consequences over family reconciliation. You've chosen pride over your children's well-being. You've chosen to double down on betraying your mother rather than taking responsibility for what you've done. He picked up the pen with a shaking hand. How do I know you won't file charges anyway, even if I sign? Because unlike you, Michael, when I give my word, I keep it. When I make a promise, it means something. When I tell you I won't do something if you meet certain conditions, you can trust that. The irony of that statement hung in the air between us. The son who had spent years lying to me and stealing from me was worried that I might not be trustworthy. Michael signed every page of the restitution agreement. His signature was shaky and reluctant, but it was legally binding. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. This is a no-contact order regarding my finances. You are never to ask me about money again. You are never to request loans, gifts, or financial help of any kind. You are never to comment on my spending, my investments, or my financial decisions. If you need money, you figure it out yourself, like every other adult in America. He signed that too. Michael, your children are welcome in this house any time. Jennifer is welcome here. You are welcome here, as long as you treat me with respect. But the days of you thinking you can manipulate, steal from, or control me are over forever. He gathered up his briefcase, the briefcase full of fraudulent documents that would never be signed, and stood to leave. Mom, for what it's worth, you're right. I did underestimate you. I thought you were just a lonely old lady who would be grateful for any attention, even bad attention. And what do you think now? I think I forgot that the woman who raised me by herself, who built a successful business from nothing, who managed to save almost $2 million, probably didn't lose her spine just because she turned 70. As he walked toward my front door, the same door he had slammed a week earlier, I called out to him one last time.